So I'm out here at the farm, and it made me think about how Trump really screwed over farmers.
I'm going to say the meanest thing I could possibly say to these Trump voters posting self-pity videos because they're suffering due to his policies. Now,
So I got a lot of grief about a post I did where I said I think it's hilarious watching these farmers cry over losing their family farms after voting for Trump. And I guess hilarious is the wrong word. It's more cathartic to see MAGA voters have to suffer through Trump's policies like the rest of us. Because, I mean, come on, they had to get bailed out Trump's first term. They should have learned then. He did a tariff war with China, and there was a farmer bailout. Anyone remember that? You know? And then they voted for him again in 2020, and they voted for him again in 2024, and here we are, a bunch of them are losing their farms. But guess what? They're not losing their farms. Trump is going to do another farmer bailout. He's going to spend between $10 and $50 billion to bail these farmers out. And, like, what does that even mean? They're still going to have to pay a lot for all their equipment because of the tariff wars. And because of the tariff wars, now China is buying all their soybeans from Argentina. Are they going to start growing different crops? How's he going to find people to buy these crops that want to pay the tariffs for it? Or is he just going to bail them out every single year? You know, when I say it's hilarious, what I mean is I want these people to suffer for voting for Trump. So they learn that the Republican Party doesn't care about anyone that's not a billionaire. They don't. All they care about is tax cuts for the rich. I mean, look at this government shutdown. They want to cut off health care to millions of Americans to give billionaires a tax cut they don't even need. Trump is not your friend unless you're a billionaire. Period.
So let me get this straight. Farmers want a bailout of $50+ billion, but their administration, and I say their because most farmers voted for the Trump administration, has now sent $20 billion to their competitor, Argentina, that produces a hell of a lot of soybeans, and that just signed on the dotted line with China to send them their soybeans from Argentina. So as our American market is cut out, half of our market, our soybean market is collapsed, doesn't exist anymore because China said they're not buying soybeans from us. What are we going to do? I mean, we see that we bailed them out in the first administration, and now we're bailing them out again. But that's the same people, the same party that talks about we don't want to do anything with welfare. We want to get rid of welfare. We want to get rid of any kind of handouts, bailouts. But they keep on getting the bailouts. They keep on getting the handouts. They keep on getting the welfare. So a party that talks about getting rid of these, I don't know, socialist programs, they sure as hell use them a lot. Again, you didn't want to give food to kids for their school lunches. You didn't want to give kids, again, and adults, and parents, a respite from paying those absorbent amounts and educating themselves. You don't want to give people that are disabled health care. So, you explain to me why the rest of America should bail you out. Why do you deserve to be bailed out every single time that Billy needs some new braces? Every time you vote in an administration that hurts your bottom line. Why should we have to suffer? Why should our national debt have to go up to support you? And then we're going to have to keep on doing it over and over again because you guys don't have a market to sell to. And that's the main reason you're asking for a handout. Please, this is specifically to MAGA and Republicans. Explain this to me.
Farmers across the country have started going on TV and complaining, one, about Donald Trump's tariffs, two, about the trade war with China, and three, that they're not able to sell their products. Specifically, soybean farmers who are looking at losing $300 per acre of crops this year. So On a 1,000-acre soybean field, they're looking at losing $300,000. That's because China has not put in an order for soybeans in this quarter alone. They haven't put in an order of soybeans from American farmers since April, which means there's nothing being sold from the United States to China when it comes to soybeans. Where's China going? To Argentina, to Brazil. What's the United States doing? They're bailing out Argentina to the tune of $20 billion while ignoring farmers in the United States. And these farmers are now saying, we don't want a bailout. We need a trade deal. Because since Donald Trump's first term, our profits are down 50% because he keeps screwing with our trade to foreign countries. We need Donald Trump to actually uphold his promises and quit screwing around. We need him to stop telling us that he's going to give us back our money, the money we spent on tariffs. We need him to keep his word, to make a trade deal, and to quit screwing up our free markets.
MAGA Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene says Democrats are right about demanding subsidies for the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare be extended. Let me show you her clip.
And to allow Democrats to have some sort of moral high ground on this issue because they're the only ones talking about it, I think is a major failure from the Republican Party. And I'm not going to stand there and just keep talking the talking points when my own adult children can hardly afford health insurance premiums, when everyone in my district, it's the #1 issue that I hear about day in and day out, not just people on the ACA, but people that have private insurance as well. And I think it's something that we have to talk about.
Now, what she's talking about, one of the Democrats' demands for giving their votes to reopen the government is that the Obamacare subsidies be extended. The subsidies are running out, at least a portion of them, by the end of the year. Some people's premiums will double. You know, my premiums are already $1,500 a month. I mean, it's very expensive. They could double for some people. And what she's saying is her own children's premiums are going to double, her own child. And that's what won her over. Now, a couple things here. One, she's admitting the Democrats are telling the truth about Obamacare being a problem as far as the subsidies. Two, she's admitting the Democrats are telling the truth that they're actually fighting for regular Americans. They're not fighting to get illegals funding. That's what the Republicans keep saying. She admitted it. What they're fighting for is helping real Americans. Final point here. The data shows that the majority of the folks helped under Obamacare with these subsidies are Republicans in Republican states and Republican districts. That's why she's freaking out. This is not good for the Republicans, for the shutdown. It's great for Democrats. We're finally seeing a crack in the wall, which is great.
I'll say this as simply as I can. Trump make tariff happen. Tariff increase price on American. China no like tariff. Start trade war. China decide no buy American soybean. American soybean farmer go out of business. Trump take money from tariff generated from increased price from American consumer, give to soybean farmer, so business no go under. No give to people paying price, consumer, give to soybean farmer. Also, China still needs soybean. China buys soybean from Argentina. America give money to Argentina. Trump genius businessman?
On today's episode of Oh No, I'm Getting What I Voted For.
Growers say they feel betrayed after the Trump administration gave Argentina a financial lifeline, a $20 billion loan. Argentina then immediately dropped their soy tariffs to China, undercutting U.S. farmers.
And as you just saw in that clip, soybean farmers are upset at Orange Man because he gave $20 billion to the country of Argentina to help them out. Which in my opinion sounds very America first, insert sarcasm. Argentina said, "Don't cry for me and thank you for the $20 billion. Got rid of tariffs for China and sold them soybeans. And let's see what these farmers are doing to try to survive the situation that they voted for.
With prices for crops crashing, farmers are doing everything they can to stay viable, even selling off equipment. Joel's Tractors in Strawberry Point, Iowa saw a 30% jump in farm machinery up for auction this year.
You know what? I'm not gonna lie, that is actually one way to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And what doesn't help the farmer situation is that when they do need machinery, those items are tariffed heavily because of the steel tariffs. The next person that I'm going to show you actually worked for John Deere, the tractor machinery company, in which they're estimating that steel tariffs are going to cost their company $600 million, in which it resulted in layoffs for them.
It's like a kick to the gut, right? When you're getting laid off after you've given 20 plus years to the company.
When you think about these tariffs and the ripple effects that they've had, do you think it's worth it?
You know, you hope that possibly in the long term, they would be helpful. Currently here in the short term, no, it's really killing us.
Wait a minute, wasn't it you guys that were chanting the slogan, short-term pain for long-term gains? Because it sounds like that short-term pain is not fun for you guys as well. And if you've enjoyed this episode of FAFO, drop me a comment and let me know what you think about the situation.
Bribe, and he refused to answer. He said he didn't answer the question whether he took the money, so I'm asking you the question. Did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, I answered that question multiple times. And frankly, you know...
Well, I don't think, with respect, I don't think you did. But in case I just didn't hear you, what is the answer? Did he take the money?
Senator Schiff, that happened prior to my confirmation as Attorney General.
Do you know,
I said that.
Do you know, sitting here, whether
all
he took the money?
I know is that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and FBI Director Patel said there was no case. And Caroline Leavitt is one of the most trustworthy human beings I know.
So
and,
was she,
was she
if
right? You worked for me, you would have been fired because you were censured by Congress for lying with your egregious...
You can stipulate to all your personal attacks on the Democratic members of the committee.
Personal attacks? You've been attacking my FBI director. You've been attacking my office. You've been attacking...
But what we're interested in...
borders are.
What we're interested in is the answer to these oversight questions.
You want your
you were asked by my colleague. You were asked by my colleague.
Attacking good people.
Regular order, Madam Chair, so I can ask a question. You were asked by my colleague from Vermont whether you will support providing a video or audio tape, if it exists, of Mr. Homan taking $50,000 in bribe money from the FBI. Will you support a request by this committee to provide that tape or tapes to the committee? Yes or no?
Senator Schiff, you can talk to Director Patel about that.
Well, I'm talking to you about it. You're the Attorney General. This will be your decision. Will you support?
You don't have to tell me what is my decision and what is not my decision. I said you can talk to Director Patel.
You don't have to try to.
You think you've got a gotcha with Tom Homan, our borders are.
Excuse me.
Who's been out there fighting for our country since Donald Trump took office.
I'm trying to ask a question. Regular order, please. And you don't have to defer to the FBI director to pass the buck. So I'm asking you, will you support a request so that the committee, or indeed I believe the American people, should be able to see that video or audio tape? Will you support that request?
Will you apologize to Donald Trump for trying to impeach him?
I guess the answer is you won't support that request.
After you now know that Joe Biden tried to cover up Hunter Biden's involvement with Ukraine.
Excuse me. Let me do this, because I think it's valuable that the American people get a sense of what you've refused to answer today. So these are just some of the questions you refused to answer, or have answered with personal attacks on members of this committee. You were asked whether you consulted with career ethics lawyers, as you promised you would do during your nomination hearing, when you approved the president receiving a $400 million gift from the Qataris. You refused to answer that question. You were asked who or what role you may have played, or who played the role in asking that Trump's name be flagged in any of the Epstein documents gathered by the FBI. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan kept the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan paid taxes on the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did career prosecutors find insufficient evidence to charge James Comey? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, how are military strikes on these boats in the Caribbean legal? And you refused to even answer that question.
You were asked, a law degree,
excuse me. You were asked, did you discuss indicting James Comey with the president? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did you approve the firing of antitrust lawyers who disagreed with the Hewlett-Packard merger? You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you support a restoration fund for violent insurrections to attack the Capitol on January 6th. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you were firing career professionals, career prosecutors, just because they worked on January 6th January 6th investigations. You refused to answer that question. You were asked by my California colleague whether you believe government officials, like immigration officials, have to abide by court orders. You wouldn't even answer that question. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing.
Oversight?
Excuse me, you can attack me after my time is over.
You've attacked all of us, including President Trump, for your entire
You can attack me later,
career.
and I know you've got plenty of canned attacks. We've heard them all day today.
Canned attacks on you?
This is supposed to be...
No one needs a canned attack on you.
Regular order, Madam Chair. I'm trying to speak. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing of the Justice Department. And it comes in the wake of an indictment called for by the president of one of his enemies. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing, and it comes in the wake of revelations that a top administration official took $50,000 in a bag, and this department made that investigation go away. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing when dozens of prosecutors have been fired simply because they worked on cases investigating the former president. This is, and now
What
the current
about the
president.
fires in California?
And
Do you
this
care
is
about that,
supposed to be,
senatorship?
excuse me, this is supposed to be an oversight hearing in which members of Congress can get serious answers to serious questions about
Are the riots in LA serious?
About the cover-up of corruption, about the prosecution of the president's enemies. And
I think you owe the president an apology.
When will it be
Your entire career, frankly.
that the members of this committee on a bipartisan basis demand answers to those questions and refuse to accept
Clearly you're a failed lawyer because you don't understand when someone can and cannot
accept personal slander as an answer to those questions.
Personal slander.
With
Will
that,
you
Madam Chair,
apologize to
I
Donald
yield
Trump
back.
for slandering him? Personal slander.
Senator.
May I ask unanimous consent, Madam Chair, to introduce into the record the statement of 1,000 former Justice Department officials who warned that the Comey indictment is a democracy-threatening abuse of power. May I also request unanimous consent for the introduction to the record of 282 former career officials at the Justice Department raising an alarm who were voluntarily or involuntarily forced to leave the department because of improper actions taken by the Department of Justice. May I introduce, with unanimous consent, the Justice Department manual that talks about when initiating and declining charges are subject to impermissible considerations. And finally, Madam Chair, may I introduce the letter from Michael Ben-Ari, a career counterterrorism prosecutor, DOJ, a letter he nailed to his door, which concludes by urging officials to do the right thing for the right reasons, to follow the facts and the law, and raises the alarm that the decision to remove experienced career officials from U.S. attorneys' offices, the FBI, and critical parts of DOJ undermines our country's abilities to counter terrorist organizations, malign nation-state actors, and countless others that seek to harm our nation and its citizens. And he believes that the priority is prosecuting the president's enemies rather than protecting the country.
One moment.
May I have unanimous consent to enter these into the record?
Without objection.
Thank you. I yield back.
Senator Brett.
Senator Moody, may I clarify one thing he entered in the record? I just want to say that I believe he entered a letter by 200 and something former employees. Well, I believe the spokesperson for that letter was also the spokesperson for Jack Smith.
Senator Brett. Thank you, Madam Chair. General Bondi, I want to talk to you about the next generation. I want to talk to you about our kids, people who don't have a seat at the table but need us to fight for them tirelessly. When you look at this, I see a couple of different buckets of ways that bad actors are taking advantage of our children, and in some of the most extreme situations, we lose that child, whether to death or to self-harm, and I think we owe it to them to do something about it. So first is social media. Tell me, What are you doing? I have sat across from a number of parents who have talked to me about their child either falling victim to sextortion, different schemes that are online. We also know that there is an element of human trafficking that comes here. Let's start with social media. What are you doing to hold bad actors accountable, to track them down, and to keep our kids safe?
Senator, first, thank you for bringing that up. This, I believe, is what an oversight hearing should be about.
Thank you.
Not yell. Oh, he's gone already. He comes in and leaves. This is what an oversight hearing should be about, trying to help parents and children online. Yes, Director Patel has been doing a great job. The FBI, we have an entire unit. Not only that, our National Security Division is working internationally.
Well, and I want to talk about that too, because I think a lot of this comes from overseas.
Yes.
And so whether it's these schemes, this extortion schemes,
Yes.
et cetera, it's happening off our shores. How are you connecting the dots there? And then additionally, let's look at human trafficking. And you find a number of times people are lured into this from posts on social media. I believe that that is a global trafficking ring. I would like to speak to what are you doing to make sure you're holding those people accountable and getting to the bottom of it, finding.
Our farmers have grain, soybeans rotting in the fields right now, where he's having to take money that they stole from us. They stole from us with tariffs to pay those farmers whose markets he destroyed with the government. So look, I am a common sense Democrat, and apparently it means that I'm going to have to be really, really loud because there's not a lot of folks saying these very simple things. We have to grow our economy. We cannot live in this world alone without alliances, without trade partners. We have to work together.
So if there were a bailout, right, which the president is apparently considering, what would that mean?
Well, the stopgap needs to come because they've kind of painted the farmer in a corner. I mean, I want trade, not aid. I need a market. I need a place to sell this stuff. I can work hard enough and make a product. If you give me some place to sell it, I'll take care of myself. But they've painted us in a corner with this China deal and China buying no soybeans. I mean, they've tore our market in half. I mean, if you take the 4 years prior to Trump's first tariff war, the average price of a bushel of soybeans is $12.54. The average price for the 4 years during Trump's first tariff war is $9.39. That's a $163 an acre swing to the minus. The next 4 years after the tariff war, the average price is $13.59. That's a $218 upswing. Now we're back to $10.21. I think the board is today. My local elevator's $9.79, so I'm at $172 an acre loss. I mean, the farmer can't continue to produce a crop below the cost of production, and that's where we're at, and we don't have anywhere to sell it. We're in a tariff war with China. We're in a tariff war with everybody else. I mean, where do they want me to market this stuff?
Hello. In today's episode of MAGA Regret, let's go to Utah. Y'all remember that I traveled there earlier this year because baby girl graduated from nursing school. Yay! Anywho, so let's go to Ogden, which is where I was. The largest employer, apparently, in Ogden, Utah, was a satellite IRS office. So you remember when Ketamine Kevin came up there with the Doge and they did all them cuts and fired all them people. Well, that office lost quite a few members of staff. Well, the remaining few staff that were there are now gone because of the shutdown. So they're now interviewing local people who had businesses. So they interviewed this man. He's 78 years old. He owned a coffee shop. Well, when the first cuts came, he saw a big dip in business, but he was still trying to hold on. Well, now, y'all, he said the time has come and he got to get rid of his coffee shop, y'all. And You know where this is going. He voted for syphilitic Sid. And he says very emotionally that he's very sad about all of this. This business had been in his family and blah, de blah, de blah. I don't mean to minimize his pain, but you voted for this, Larry. Yes, you did. You voted to lose your coffee shop, Larry. You did. Okay, bye.
I came across this article today in one of the small right-wing publications. It wasn't in the national media, but it was the Alberta separatist crew were bragging about their latest rounds of meetings in Washington. Washington meetings that they said were senior cabinet level people about the plan to break up our nation. So the two of the people who were on that team was Jeffrey Rath. He was making his name on Fox News about what, Alberta separating or Alberta becoming the 51st state. Well, Jeffrey Rath also was in the news recently. He's gotten himself in trouble with his work as a lawyer. You can see that he was, according to the Edmonton Journal, forced to pay costs for his actions. This is the guy who's going to negotiate a new country. The other one was Mitch Sylvester. I've been looking into Mitch. In his public presentations, there was one where he was comparing, apparently, people in Alberta to the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto. I find that really troubling. What happened in the Warsaw Ghetto was one of the most horrific crimes in history. And when I'm in Calgary and Edmonton, I don't see people being pulled out in the streets like what happened in the Warsaw Ghetto. And yet, again, this is the kind of representation of people who are negotiating to break up our country behind the scenes. We shouldn't be surprised, because if you look at Vladimir Putin's playbook of the attempts to create these false pro-Russian governments in Crimea, in the Donbass, I mean, the people that he came up with were certainly not credible political figures at all. But this is the second meeting where the MAGA Alberta team have been down there talking about separating. They were bragging. They said, we had a very productive meeting at senior level with the Trump administration. And one of the people that was in our meeting left to go directly to the Oval Office. In April, they were back down. They were there for the first time. And good article by DeSmog Investigations states that Dennis Modry, who was part of the Alberta team, said, quote, we talked about a $500 million transition loan that we'd only draw down on as necessary as we worked with the U.S. to transition from a province to a country. So they were talking about money on the table to break up our nation. And then Modry also stated, according to this article, that they had a plan to prop up Alberta's currency. Well, Alberta doesn't have currency. There's Canadian money. But they said the U.S. agrees to take every Alberta citizen's Canadian dollar and then exchange it for one U.S. dollar. That's what they're talking about, folks. You're not seeing this in the mainstream media. And again, lest you think, well, these guys are crackpots, and I agree. Lest you think that they are just marginal, and I agree. They would make perfect puppets for campaigns of disinformation, because if Daniel Smith gets the referendum going, you are going to see our nation be rocked by rage disinformation, offshore bots, direct interference by the United States. This is what's on the table right now as our country's being threatened. And speaking of Danielle Smith and her referendum, well, she's just out there stoking the fires again. So she's announced that she is leading the charge to create a new pipeline through British Columbia for Alberta oil. She says that she's applying to the federal projects plan, and so the media love this. The media love, is Ottawa being mean to the West? We just paid $34 billion to build a pipeline for massively rich oil companies. That was to the tune of between $500 and $1,200 for every household in Canada. Money taken out of families' pockets to pay the richest companies in the world to build them a pipeline. That's not nearly the end of what we've given big oil. Now, the TMX pipeline, there is no business case for it. They're making oodles of money off it. But in order to get the money back for what it cost, well, who's going to get the money back? The government promised us that there would be a private sector buyer and they would pay for the full cost and we get our money back. Well, no company's stepping up to buy the pipeline. Why not? Well, because the cost was so high to build it. The only way you make your money back for the pipeline is it's called the toll fees. So every barrel of pipeline, barrel that goes through the pipeline, you charge a fee on and you amortize it over, say, a 30-year horizon, and then you figure out how to get your money back. Well, it doesn't matter how much they figure, it'll never make the money back if the pipeline has to charge the price that it needs to charge. So initially, the plan was they were going to get to ship their oil down the pipeline at only 22 cents on the dollar. The rest was going to be paid for by the Canadian public. 78 cents on the dollar we would pay to subsidize the richest companies on the planet. Then they decided, well, we'll make the rates a little fairer. So now we're paying about 52 cents on every dollar. You didn't hear that on Power and Politics, did you? You didn't hear that on the nightly news, that we are subsidizing the massive profits of the oil industry, 52 cents on every barrel shipped. And still no company is going to step up because they know if the public got wind of that and the companies actually had to pay the full toll fees, the pipeline would stop working. So why is Danielle Smith claiming that she's going to create a new pipeline? Well, work with me here. This is not about building a pipeline. There is no proponent to build a pipeline. There is no business case for building a pipeline. Danielle Smith is putting up, she says, $14 million to study possible routes for a pipeline, and she's demanding that Ottawa give her support. She's setting up a war here. She's setting up Mark Carney to be the fall guy because there's no business case. Alberta's not really putting up anything other than a study. But what she's going to argue, and you're going to see this play out in the media again and again and again, they're not going to talk about the fact that there's no business case. They're going to blame the tanker ban. You see, on the British Columbia coast, because the coastline was so fragile, they put a tanker ban in to stop oil being shipped along the coast. She is going to blame the tanker ban for robbing Albertans of their future. So that sets up a fight with British Columbia. It sets up a fight with environmentalists. My God, MAGA loves fighting environmentalists. It sets up a fight with Ottawa, all for pipeline that nobody's stepping forward to build. But what is this going to do? This is about stoking the rage of the MAGA base, of creating these straw men that can be set fire to as Danielle Smith pushes forward this referendum on breaking up our country. That's the playbook, folks. Keep your eye on it. I'm going to...
Oh, MAGA, you're in trouble. Apparently there's a shortage of workers on the farm. But don't worry, MAGA. Brooke Collins, who heads agriculture, says that she has a solution. Seems like Trump and Brooke Collins have put their heads together and come up with a solution to solve the problem on the farms losing workers. Let's watch the video and see what Brooke Collins has to say to solve this issue.
Score enough. There will be no amnesty. The mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way, and we move the workforce towards automation and 100% American participation, which again, with 34 million people, able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do that fairly quickly. Thank you.
Did you hear that, MAGA? They're saying if you're able-bodied and on Medicaid, you are going to work in the fields. MAGA, this is where it hits you.
So I made a video a few months ago about the farmers in Nebraska, and I must have had a lot more sympathy back then because I was cheering for them. Well, now these farmers in Arkansas, I don't care. I don't care what happens. They keep going on TV and crying and saying that they're not going to be able to afford the farm and all this stuff. Well, guess what? Sell your farm, sell it to a big corporation because this is what you did. You voted for this. Honestly, you voted for this. The man has one economic policy, and that's tariffs. What happened last time? What happened last time? We had to bail you guys out, right? That's what happened? Well, what did you think was going to happen this time? Did you think he was just going to do his tariffs and we're going to bail you out again? He doesn't care about you guys. And I'm sure you guys are walking around a couple months ago going, yeah, we voted for this. This is what we want. Yeah, we voted for all this. Yeah. We're not going to bail you out every time you make a mistake. I have no sympathy for people who don't try to help themselves. And you thought nothing bad was going to happen to you because you voted for him, you're his fan, and he was going to take care of you. Guess what? He doesn't give a shit about you.
If you're a farmer and still support Trump, you are a victim of gaslighting. Let's look at the definition, shall we? Gaslighting, the practice of psychologically manipulating someone into questioning their own sanity, memory, or powers of reasoning. I don't know about y'all, but these farmer bailouts that are about to come out, prime evidence of gaslighting. We've been told the tariffs will help. We've been told that he's so good for agriculture. If he's so good for ag, why have we lost so much demand that he's already over here saying, here's $10 billion worth of bailouts, after we already got the Biden bucks? Because big ag and the people who own farm debt are lobbying for these payments. Don't get me wrong, some of these payments are going to be make or break for some producers this year. And I'm not talking just like your 20-acre producer, your 500-acre producer. I'm talking your couple thousand-acre producer. Pretty okay size depending on what state you're in, okay? South Dakota, 2,000 acres is pretty solid. But you know who's going to benefit from it most? All the big farmers are going to make much more than any of the little guys. However, Big Ag is going to benefit from it most because they own the farm debt. The really sad thing, though, is that this shouldn't even be about Republican versus Democrat. This should be about policy and how do we improve our ag economy. Fighting the wrong battle by fucking picking people who don't help us, not bailing us out. That's not what I'm talking about with help, but people who just stay out of our markets. Why is that so hard? We need to understand that agriculture benefits from free trade. And if we are doing something that is completely adverse to free trade, we are hurting American farmers. This doesn't need to be Trump v. Biden. This doesn't need to be Republican versus Democrat. This needs to be look at the facts, let's have a conversation, and let's understand how the economics of our industry actually work so that we can start voting specifically for people who are going to make sure that they at least put in policies that don't interrupt our profitability or shut the government down so that any of us that have FSA loans can't even write a check.
Well, like we talked earlier, we went from 12 billion to zero, and then, as a farmer, we get up one morning and you give Argentina, which is our second biggest competition in the world. They're the largest exporters of soybean meal in the world. So I get up one morning, I turn the news on, and you give $20 billion of taxpayer money to my competition.
I wonder how it fucking feels to scream all election cycle, America first, America first, America first, just for the man that you elected simply because he wasn't going to give any money to foreign nations, looks at you and says, you're a farmer, that's okay, I'm going to bankrupt the fuck out of you by tariffing the shit out of China, causing them to buy soybeans from your biggest competitor, Argentina, and then while you guys are filing active bankruptcy because China is not buying your soybeans, I am going to turn around and instead of bailing you guys out, I am going to send a $20 billion check to your competitor, Argentina. What was that again about not wanting money to go to foreign nations? And then Donald Trump looks you in your bankrupting eyeballs and says, anyways, no bailout for you. We're going to give money to a foreign nation. And that foreign nation happens to be your competitor. I don't even understand how angry you must be to sit there and be that lied to. And then just like, there's nothing you could do about it, which is kind of diabolical to me because you guys did go through this the first term of, like, his first term. And you said, let's do it again. America first, baby. give me a follow Mercedes Chandler something, face again, bye.
America's largest and most valuable export to China. Do you know what it is? Soybeans. Well, they have crashed to zero because of President Trump's trade war. Farmers are feeling the pain big time, and the Trump administration could announce a more than $10 billion bailout this week. But farmers tell Janet Shamlian their problems are much bigger than that.
It's harvest season in America's heartland.
Is this the prime harvest time in southern Illinois?
Yes, it is right now.
But for soybean farmers like Scott Gaffner, it's a season of worry. Soybeans are the nation's largest agricultural export. But as the trade war drags on, China, America's biggest buyer, hasn't purchased any this year.
We can't help but feel very anxious of wondering why it's taking so long to get this resolved.
Are you angry?
The farther we go into this season, the more we're going to lose. And China should have been buying our beans already, and they're not. It's like crickets.
So he's storing what he's producing, hoping the market will turn.
So we're going to lose probably about $2 a bushel this year.
And how much does that mean overall?
That means a lot. It means we can't sustain that kind of loss for a very long of a time period without going under.
And it's not the first time this has happened. Soybean farmers were hammered during President Trump's first trade war with China in 2018. Now the administration is promising them another bailout.
We don't want the aid, we want the trade.
Gaffner says one-time relief is not a long-term solution.
If China starts buying elsewhere, which they are doing now, once they establish those trade routes, it becomes more difficult for them to come back to the U.S. to buy their commodities. Once we lose that, we may never get it back again. And that's huge for next generations.
Including for his son Cody, who would be the fourth generation to farm the land.
If I do come back, I do have to have a second job to supplement that, because there's no way currently with the tariffs in place that we can survive with that.
For Scott Gaffner, it's about more than his bottom line.
We're just not stimulating our own sales, we're stimulating the economy in our area. That economy relies upon us as farmers to keep that economy going. And so it impacts everybody.
Newsmax brought a farmer on to praise Donald Trump's bailout plan. Instead, he tore Donald Trump apart. Now, as you know, right now, Donald Trump's tariffs are destroying farmers. China has not bought a single soybean this quarter, and they're our largest export market. And farmers are hurting, and Donald Trump has a plan to send them some of the tariff money. Well, Newsmax brought a farmer on to praise those tariffs, but it went a little differently than planned.
I'm paying that tariff because my importer, John Deere, paid it. They paid it directly to the Treasury. Now, the President of the United States is going to take my money and give it back to me and call it a bailout. That's just comical.
Yeah, they're going to take my money. My inputs have been raised. I'm paying these tariffs. You're giving me my money back, and you want me to thank you? Newsmax tried to get praise for Deere Leader. Instead, it backfired beautifully. And that is well done by this farmer. Donald Trump is doing nothing to help them, only hurt them, and even they are calling it out.
Those tariffs I'm paying on inputs just this spring, and all of our parts, many of our parts come from other countries, all right? Just this spring, I go to my local John Deere dealer. I need a chain for my corn planter. I take it out of the box, John Deere box, dealt with these people for 40 years, John Deere part number, turn it over, it says made from China. Okay, I'm thinking, wow, that's odd. I just paid a tariff on that doggone thing. So here's the deal. I'm paying that tariff because my importer, John Deere, paid it. They paid it directly to the Treasury. Now the President of the United States is going to take my money and give it back to me and call it a bailout. That's just comical. And I tell you what, this administration has got agriculture, has got farmers exactly where they want them. And that is in need of what only Trump can deliver, and that's a bailout.
There's so much about this moment that is trying to make people feel like they've lost their minds. When in fact, these motherfuckers are crazy.
I'm going to say the meanest thing I could possibly say to these Trump voters posting self-pity videos because they're suffering due to his policies. Now, I don't do personal attacks, so I'm just going to tell you the truth, because sometimes the truth hurts. You don't get to complain. You definitely don't get to complain about the lack of leadership or ideas coming from Democrats, because we didn't do this to us. You did this to us. If you and I are driving down the interstate together and you reach over and grab the wheel and you steer us into a 200-foot deep ravine full of lava and sharks because you think big interstate is corrupt and you thought it would be funny to shake things up, when I scream at you as lava sharks eat our legs, you don't get to be mad at me for being mad at you, because it was my idea to stay on the interstate, and it was your idea that ruined everything for both of us. You don't get to ask what Democrats would do differently with the economy. You don't get to ask what Democrats are doing to help us right now. Those are 2024 questions, but we're in 2025 consequences. This era of the United States right now, this is about the president you elected, the cabinet secretaries your Senate confirmed, the cowering Republicans you elected to obey him in Congress, and all of the very real consequences resulting. We told you these things were going to happen and we gave you lots of warnings, but you grabbed the wheel anyway. If you want to know what Democrats would do differently, look at the track record going back to the Great Depression. Economic growth, job growth, wage growth, retirement plan growth, all of these things have been better under Democratic leadership than Republican. If you like these things, you vote for Democrats because it's what Democrats do. I don't care if you like the Democratic candidate. I don't even care if you understand how the policies work. And I'm not going to ask you if you believe me, because every chart and every graph that matters at the highest level for the middle class proves me right over the past 100 years. I'm only going to ask you that over the next year and a half, you come to grips with this fact so you don't make the same mistake again.